Microsoft PowerPoint 2007, Formatting Content, Shapes, and Graphics. We've already seen in a previous CBT Nugget how we can add and insert pictures and graphics and shapes and cool things, but now if we want to format them, change the color, change the shape and size of them, and make sure they're all aligned, well, that's what this CBT Nugget is all about. Some neato things that we're going to look at here, including how to size our graphics. We kind of looked at it briefly when showed you how to put clip art and pictures and images on, but now we're going to get into the real nitty-gritty on this. Then we have the alignment of these particular objects on the page. You want to make it look evenly spaced, how to use grid lines. We're going to take a look at how we can recolor objects if we want to, and then we're going to take a look at how we can even connect each other's graphics up with particular shapes. We've already had a pretty good look at putting clip art and pictures and some of the graphics and things into our Acme Vision presentation, but here's where we kind of get down to some of the nitty-gritty, especially if you are going to take the exam for PowerPoint. They want to make sure you know how to manipulate and maneuver things here on the screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and move down to the slide that has the marketing plans, and you can see that we have our clip art here, and we already showed you some of the neat little things we can do with the effects. And then if we scroll down here, of course, we have our pictures that we have, and we showed you how to add pictures, and we've added media and sound effects. Well, let's say we wanted to resize these pictures just a little bit to fit better on the screen or do something. So all we need to do at any point is if you select on a picture, it will then, of course, remember, anytime you're going to do something and there's new, you get a new tab that you can utilize. You can use the picture tools by clicking on here, and it'll bring up the format, and then you can start adjusting in picture styles. The other thing that you can do is if I deselect off of here, and if I double click, it'll do the same thing without me having to click on the format and bring that particular tool up. So that's just kind of, again, just a way for us to get back. Now for sizing, when you look at the size of a picture, you obviously, as we saw, you can use the anchors that you have right here. You can click on an anchor right here, it turns to the crosshairs, and then you can adjust. And if you use the corners, it keeps the aspect ratio. Now, what's an aspect ratio? Well, an aspect ratio means that whenever you adjust something from a height standpoint, the width will adjust to maintain the ratio between the height and the width. In other words, for a box, it would be like a 1-to-1 relationship. For every, if this is 2 inches, this is going to be 2 inches. If this is 3 inches, this is going to be 3 inches. That's a 1-to-1 corresponding aspect ratio. Now, for like television uses a 4-to-3. So you have a slightly better horizontal than you do a vertical, or vice versa. And so what happens is anytime you adjust something, you want to make sure that that aspect ratio remains the same. But in the world of PowerPoint, when I'm doing a presentation, sometimes I don't need to maintain that aspect ratio. And so what I can do is I can use the vertical, either up here on top or on the bottom, just by selecting, and you'll notice that the width doesn't change, but the height is changing. It kind of elongates it just a little bit. Now notice any effects that we have placed upon a picture or a clip art will then match whatever changes that you have right here, which is nice because I would hate to have to start to resize the After Effects image here. That could get kind of hard after a while. So you can see that you can do that. You can stretch it, bring it back to this, or if you want, you can stretch it off, and now you've increased the width, but the height has remained the same. So you can do that. You can also, if any point in time you can hit reset picture, and it will turn off any of the formatting that has been done to this particular picture. Now that's a way that we can go ahead and do this, where we use the handles, and sometimes people like to eyeball, as we like to say, use your eyes only to view this, but sometimes you need to be exact, and you need to use exact measurements to make sure that it fits. So I'm going to go ahead and click undo here a couple times so we bring it back to the original size. I'm going to go over here to flutes, and over here on my ribbon, on my office ribbon, on the toolbar here, I can see picture size. Now remember, you can change the size down here, or you can click the down arrow, and what it does is it actually allows you, and here let me resize this a little bit so you'll be able to see everything. You can see it says, all right, your height and is right here, and your width, and you can see a little bit Let me move it over just a little bit more here. There we go. You can see that the height and the width that we have here can be changed by merely putting in numbers for this particular picture. Right now it's about 2.3 and 2.2. If I highlight it, you can kind of see it. I can make it 3 and take it over here and hit 3, and then you can change the size. Or if you're like, oh, you know what, I want to do this a little bit differently, if down at the bottom here you can click on the expand arrow, which is just right here, and what it'll do is it'll bring up the dialog box. So now if you're thinking, well, I wasn't able to see some of what I was doing there, not a problem here. Let me bring the dialog box up, and you can see that I changed the height and the width. You can use the up and down arrows if you want, and I can bring it down to where it was originally, 2.7. Actually, it was, there we go, 2.3 to 2.15 or 2.2. And you can look down to where that is. And now you can see what the original size was when I started messing around with it, 3.29 to 3.07. You can see that. And if I'm like, oh, that doesn't look good, I want to bring it back to where I had it, you merely click the reset button and notice what happens. It brings it back to where you want it to be. This is where we could say, again, if you need exact measurements in inches, you can simply go in here. You can put 3 point, you can do hundredths and tenths and even down to a thousandth. Notice they also let you go up to 2,348 inches. There's a problem. I don't know of too many screens that are that big unless you're doing like PowerPoint on a Jumbotron at the football stadium, and you want to make sure the pictures are big enough and not pixelated when it stretches them. That's okay. I guess you can do that. So you can use the size right here. Now also remember, when I'll go ahead and show you here on this picture, remember we could use the anchor, the little anchor here, the green, and we could rotate the picture. You can also do rotation in degrees here. If you want to exactly get the degrees here, I want to do a rotation of 90 degrees. If I hit 90, and then tab off of here, you'll notice that it took flutes and it flipped it 90 degrees directly clockwise, and that's how it's going to go, 90 degrees. Now if I do 270, that'll be 90 degrees in the opposite direction. So it basically goes all the way around the circle. So this is 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270, and then back to 360. So you can flip it 360, but then it's like that's just a perfect circle. Why would you do that? But some people, I guess, want to do it. Or 359 degrees. Let's do that just to kind of have some fun. So you do 359. You can't really see it. Oh, there's a little bit. You can see a little bit of an angle there. It's just 1 degree, a little bit more here to the left than it is to the right. So that's just, we're having a little bit of fun here, but you can see how you can be that exact. If you're like, I want everything 345 degrees. Okay, not a problem. You can just hit your pictures and then make them all 345 degrees. Well, guess what? You know exactly that these pictures would all be rotated exactly the same, instead of having to, as we like to say, eyeball it or use your eyes, where I grab each one by the anchor handle and move it and go, well, it looks like they're about the same. Here, be exact. Figure out what it is. And here's a little tip. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to close this out. Let's say I wanted both of these to be the same. So I go ahead and I say, all right, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to use my eyes to kind of figure out that I want the B-flat 8 clarinets to look like this. And I go, wow, that looks perfect. I want this one to look exactly like it. Now, think about it. I could zoom in and I can kind of use my eyes, but I might be off a little bit. And then when you go and do the presentation, if it's just off a little bit, somebody's going to have a real good sense of perspective, and they're looking at it and going, wait, something's wrong here. So what I can do is, all I do is select this, right? I go up here to my size, and I open up the dialog box, and it says my rotation is 34 degrees. Okay? So I go ahead and close that. I select flutes. I then select my dialog box and open it up, and I say I want it to be 34 degrees. And I hit close. Guess what? These are exactly now the same on the rotation. So that's the power of using the size dialog box over here to get your rotation to look the same. Just a little tip there: if you are putting something together, it's not too hard. You just maybe make an eye estimate on this one and then just match it by utilizing the rotation. Just view what the rotation is here and then match it for each one of the pictures. And then, that fits and works for you. So this is the way that we can do some sizing. Now another option that we had over here, if you notice, was we can use what is known as cropping. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put these back here. Now on the flutes here, if I look at this a little bit, you'll notice that I have some like a little white space around the flutes. Maybe I don't want that to appear on the picture. Maybe there's a picture that I have where you had a great photo, but there's a portion of the picture you just don't want. Let's say I didn't want this flutes. Let's say you're doing a picture of a whole group of people that you're presenting, and then the guy on the end is actually not somebody you want in the picture. Now, hopefully it's not because of personal reasons, but it's just, I wanted to get a picture of our group, and this guy was the tour guide, and I didn't want him in on my presentation. So what I can do is I can crop or cut out a portion of the picture. The way you do this is it's on the size. Now what you do is you click on size, you'll notice you get the crop button. So you can crop any unwanted part. So I click on the crop, and I get my little crop dashes here. Now let's say, that we didn't want the word flutes on here. Maybe I'm doing a presentation and I don't want to insult the intelligence of my audience because everyone says, well, we know what flutes are. What you can do is you notice when I move my mouse close to these crop hashes or crop marks, it changes to show you how like I can either take it diagonal and resize if I want, or if I want to do something that I just want to get rid of the flutes part but keep the rest of it, I can move my mouse over here and see it changes to that kind of a half of a plus sign here, the little bar, and I click and I hold. Now look how I'm moving it, and watch. Boom, there it is. I've taken that portion of the picture off, so now it doesn't say flutes next to it. Okay, so that's a way that we can take our pictures, and you can do this, by the way, with clip art, any picture or photograph. You can go in here and just go boop, take it off. Okay, so that's how we do that. Now notice if I move the crop marks, all this does is move the picture. It doesn't move the crop marks. You have to change to those hash marks in order to make it work. So that's just the way that we can then again get rid of any unwanted things. So we can go ahead and click on size, turn off the crop markers, and now I can resize it again if I want to make it bigger or smaller or whatever I need to do. Just again by utilizing the anchor points on the sizing. So this is just a way for us to come in and change the size of our pictures or our clip art. Now you notice we have all these graphics all over the place. We got pictures and we got the things here. One of the things that can happen in your PowerPoint presentations here in PowerPoint 2007 is that it can get a little busy on the screen, and you want to make sure that everything is kind of aligned. Now there's one really easy way to do that, and that is to use the built-in grid that is on your PowerPoint slide to make sure that everything is aligned. Now there are two ways to get the grid to appear here on the screen. Now the first way is to come over here to View. Under Show Hide, you can do the ruler, which of course will then add a ruler here. You can use the ruler. And you can then of course turn on the grid lines right here. So now you can see these grid lines that are set up. Now this doesn't give you a lot of flexibility with the grid lines or anything like that. So what I typically do is you can turn these off here, but also back here under Picture Format, you'll notice over here under Arrange. And one of the buttons is right up here. It's called Align. Now when you click on Align, it's going to give you a drop down, and there's a couple things that are going to happen. Notice I've got my picture of the flute selected here. I can then say I want to align this to certain places. Do I want to align it to the left of the slide, to the center, to the right, to the top, align it to the middle? The middle, by the way, is the middle line going vertically. And center is, of course, see, notice how it goes up and down. It aligns it horizontally. You can then distribute evenly if you select multiple of these graphics or pictures. It will distribute horizontally. In other words, it'll put this one here, and this one here across evenly. It'll measure the even distances. Or you can distribute vertically the same thing. It will even them out across the slide here. Now here is also where you can see it can align to the slide, or you can, if you select other things, you can align it to selected objects. Aligning to the slide means when you're using the grid lines and you're doing things, it's going to work with your slide settings versus objects on the slide. So, if you think about it, it's like aligning it to the canvas or aligning it to the pieces that are on the canvas. And these are your choices. If you select multiple, you can do the align selected objects. Now, view grid lines. See, remember we said we could do the view grid lines. We also have grid settings, but on the view grid lines, by the way, if you hit Shift F9, you can see that right there, it allows the grid lines to appear. So that's a little keyboard shortcut. If I click view grid lines, there's those grid lines that we saw here. Now, you'll notice something. I said you don't have a lot of settings when you just turn on the grid lines when we did it under the view. But now here with the format, notice something. When I click on the down arrow, it said that you have the grid settings. When I click on the grid settings, check this out, the grid and the guides. Now this is something that for those of you who watched my CBT Nugget series on PowerPoint 2003, you said on the view, hey Chris, I didn't see the drawing guide, the guide settings. Don't worry, they're still here. They didn't get rid of them, but you won't be able to get to them under view. You have to go through this format and then click on the guide settings or the grid settings. And so here you can see you can snap objects to the grid. Well, what does that mean? Well, what it allows you to do is the grid is set up and evenly spaced 0.083 inches. In other words, every one of these grids will go 0.083 inches, 0.083 inches, 0.083 inches vertically, and 0.083 when you're going vertical. Now, see, if you change this, you can say, well, we want to do it every 1/16. And so if you go ahead and do that, and then you display the grid, and you'll notice that now you can see the little grids are only showing up every 1/16. So let's go back here, go to the grid line settings, and you can go up to 1/24, which is 0.042. You can do 1/12, which is that 0.083. That's fine. You can display the grid on the screen. You can also snap, and like we were saying, snap the objects to the grid. Now what that means is when you have all this, we'll go ahead and click OK. When I select this, watch what happens when I move it down. It's going to snap. Notice how I'm moving it slowly, and then all of a sudden, snap. It just snaps to the grid. I move it up here and snap. It just snaps to the grid. And then you move it down here and it snaps to the grid. And so that means that when you're adjusting these, it will allow you to know that you've matched up to the grid itself. That makes it a little easier to align these. So that's what it means by snapping to the grid. Now let's go back in here and do our grid settings again. The other one is utilizing the snap objects to other objects. That means you can connect the sides and the individual graphics together, and you can use the snap objects to other objects. Then down here, the guide settings. This is cool. When you click Display Drawing Guides on the screen, and you click OK, you'll notice that I now have these lines. I have a horizontal line going across, and I have a vertical line that I can use to adjust and compare where things are. Now, how would I want to use it? Well, let's say that I want this graphic to be about 2 inches from the center line. Well, if I click and hold, notice I take my mouse and I click and hold on this, it changes and shows you that I'm at 0. I'm right at the center. But as I move down, it's showing you how many inches that I am going. So if I say I wanted this to be 2 inches, right, 2 exact inches, and you have to put it in, or 2.41 or 2.49, and again, this is based upon the way I have my grid lines set up. Notice it moves between those grid lines right there. So let's say we'll go with 2.07, right? If I take this and I bring the graphic and I snap it to that guideline there, notice how it's there. I now know that this graphic is now 2.07 from the middle, because I did that, and I can bring it back up here to 0 and back to the middle. Same thing is over here. I can use these drawing guides to say that I want it to be 2.07 from, and notice the arrow, from the center and then I want it 2.07 here. I click on the line. And now if I place the graphic in here, I know that it's exactly 2.07 from the middle, and it's 2.07 from the middle going up vertically and horizontal. So this is what the drawing guides allow us to do. And so it makes it a little easier for us if we are trying to figure out exactly what's going on. Now if you want to also use the ruler, remember that's where you would go to View. You would do the show hide and you would turn the ruler on, and you could see that you're 2.07 and also 2.07 just right there. So, again, these are just little different ways that you can make sure that your pictures and your graphics are spot on. They're right where they need to be. So we'll go ahead and click on the picture here, and then we can go to Format. And you can then, of course, view the grid lines. You can turn them off. Notice the drawing guides still remain there. To turn those off, you need to go to the grid settings and then turn them off right here. So you can turn those off. So these are all ways that you can make sure that the objects that you have on your screen are aligned correctly. Now, one other thing before we go finish up here on our CBT Nugget is, what about the color of some of the objects? Now typically this is going to be up over here when we come up to our marketing plans. You'll notice I've got my black and white clip art. Well, what if I don't want it to be black and white? What if I want to change the colors of a particular piece of this? Well, again, I can click on it, we get the format, and you'll notice that one of the options that we have for our clip art is recolor. And when you click down on here, and the nice thing about PowerPoint 2007 and all of the Office 2007 is that they've already got some of these pre-built, and you can preview the different variations of colors. You can do light variations of different types of colors. You can do even more variations based upon the theme colors and things like that. And you can even set a transparent color. So if you want to make sure that these are transparent, you can set the transparent color that's looking through. In other words, if you want the background of this radio, this white area, to be transparent, you can set that, and so that way the picture of the ocean kind of comes through your particular graphic. But right here under more variations is where you're going to get the opportunity to use maybe some of the standard colors instead of just the variations that you see here. So I can click on this, and let's say I come over here and I want to change it to more of a red, or you can do the original recent color black. You can use blues. You can use any color that you want here under the standard colors. Or again, you can always click on more colors, and guess what? It brings up your color dialog box, and this is where you can come in and say, all right, I want maybe one of my standard colors, or create that custom color by utilizing my RGB color model or HSL. Now personally, RGB is the one that I recognize. HSL is for other people that are more familiar with that particular way. RGB, of course, using red, green, and blue. You can use HSL, which stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. Those are just two different ways that you want to be able to do it. I'm more familiar with RGB because I come from more of the television world, and that's how our tubes and our chips on our cameras are set, by red, green, and blue. So your primary colors here that you use for color. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, we got red, we got green, we got blue, and you then, of course, you can set the settings here on it by doing this. Red obviously 1, and then you can add greens and blues for that, or you can just take the little crosshairs and select a color that you want. So let's say I want to use more of a red, and then of course you just move this up and down, and it'll let you know what the new color is going to be, and set that for whatever hue, and of course you can see what the numbers are. The nice thing is, remember, if you're doing this by using your eyes and just picking a color and you go, oh, I like this color, and you want this to be the same color, just click on whatever picture you want the color of. Remember the settings for red, green, or blue, and then when you come over here, you can go ahead and then just add them. So for example, I'm literally on my paper writing down that this is 150, 26, and 47. So I'm going to go ahead and use this color, and you can set the transparency, how much things can appear behind it. Let's go to a 50% transparency. We'll use this color. We click OK, and you'll notice now that it went to kind of a 50% color ratio here over that. That looks good, okay? We like that. Now, I want this one and this one to be the same. So I can select this one, select the recolor, more variations, more colors, and again I come over here to custom. What do I need to do? That's right, write down the numbers. I put 150, green was, I'm looking at my page, 26, blue was 47, and we set the transparency for 50%, I think. So we go ahead and we click OK, and look, now it sets it up and says, all right, there you go. This now matches this, and if I wanted to make the news the same way, what do? You got it. I come down here, more variations, more colors, and also remember your recent colors will also appear too. So if you click on that, it'll say, yeah, that's now the same color as that. So there's a couple different ways that you can do that to make sure that your colors match up in here on your shapes and your graphics and your clip art and all those pictures that you have. So just ways for us to format the content that we have here on our canvas. Now we've talked a lot about the the graphics and other stuff, but one last thing I do want to show you, and something you might encounter in a more of an exam standpoint, is what if we want to connect pieces of our graphics? Remember how we said we have all our stuff? One of the things that you can do is to utilize shapes. They are also graphics, and of course you can manipulate these and use the same coloring and the alignment and things that you did. So let's say I want to take these shapes and I wanted to connect these pieces of clip art to kind of show that they're all interconnected. Well, I can use things like lines and other shapes to do so, but lines is really cool. Watch this. If I click on this, what it's going to do, I get my crosshairs, and now notice if I roll over each one of these, I get these little red dots here. Now, if you see, this one's kind of large. You got a red dot here, a red dot, it kind of shows up there, there's a clip art there, and then down here too. These are because this is the whole text box for this particular local paper, radio, television marketing plan, same thing. Now if you select like this, it's going to give you just this piece of a clip art, and this is going to give us the TV, and this is going to give us the radio. So I'm going to start here, and when I select here and I click with my left mouse, it then gives me my little arrow here, and then of course you can move this and connect it up to whatever you want. So if I can select that, it says okay, the arrow goes here. So now it's going to go from here to here. I can then go up here to shapes and say I want another arrow. So I click and drag and I move it over to here, and notice now I've got an arrow going from here to here, from here to here. And if I wanted another arrow here, same thing. I click here, click on the lines, we click and hold, and then find that point over here. There we go, that looks good. And so now you can see that you've got connecting arrows. You've now used these shapes to connect the graphics as well. So there's just something kind of look about if you needed, of course, format this particular shape. It's under drawing tools, format. Again, you're going to use what? The shape styles and colors you can use here. You can change any of the shapes, the design of the shapes, the outline. If you scroll down here, you can see all the different colors and the options that you have. So you have some pretty cool things. And I always recommend just picking and choosing something that makes sense. In this case, the intense line dark, might work. So you select that, and now these will have nice blue lines in between. So these are just some of the things that we can use to help connect our graphics as well. Well, we took a good look at how we format our graphics and shapes and things. First, taking a look at how we can not only just take our cursor and our mouse and then resize it using anchor points, but we can actually get pretty granular and put an actual size in there. We saw by using the grid lines and the drawing guides that we can even get it even more closer to making sure that our objects are evenly spaced or placed in an exact location on a particular slide. Not a problem using the grid lines, the rulers, and the tools that we have. Then, of course, we said, hey, what if we want a little different color than just black and white? Maybe we want a red or a green or something else. We showed how we can set up our color as well as how to match that color amongst all our objects. And then finally, if we wanted to maybe connect it or create another shape that's all part of that group of objects, we just showed you how the shapes work and how you can even align and connect graphics utilizing arrows. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.